right, and we're live. Hello, everybody. Happy Friday night. Happy Valentine's Day. We have Den here in the comments who is helping me moderate stuff as we go through. So if you have any questions, comments, leave them in the thread and we'll make sure to see them. You can always support this channel by going to patreon.com/Hemant. And as always, you can subscribe to the newsletter for free if you want to do that. That's where I post most of my articles. We have many, many things to discuss. I'm going to get right into it. I figured I would start with something that mostly amused me because it's two groups of people who have done a lot of bad things. We're just fighting with each other. And don't we all deserve something like that these days? So this takes us to Wheaton College, which is a biblical school outside the suburbs of Chicago. But before I get to what actually happened there, this whole story that I'm about to tell you about reminds me of a problem that stems from the Girl Scouts. Okay, let me take you back to October of 2020. Ruth Bader Ginsburg had just died. And even though early voting had already started that year for the 2020 elections, Mitch McConnell, who loves stealing Supreme Court seats, is like, oh no, voting has started. But for now, Donald Trump is president. So let's go ahead and just shove in a Republican Supreme Court justice before, Joe Biden becomes president. And he might get a chance to do that. And so, really quickly, in a matter of weeks, Republicans installed Amy Coney Barrett as Supreme Court Justice. And of course, they would never have allowed Democrats to get away with the same shenanigans. But after that happened, this is a thing I want to show you. The Girl Scouts tweeted this statement. Congratulations, Amy Coney Barrett, on becoming the fifth woman appointed to the Supreme Court since its inception in 1789. And you get a picture of all the female Supreme Court justices along with Amy Coney Barrett. And people were pissed because, of course, they're like, okay, one of these things is not like the other. Amy Coney Barrett actively wants to harm other women. She doesn't believe women should have choice over their bodies. She is a Trump person. She's radically conservative. And she's not the sort of woman who wants to open doors for other women. Once she's through, she's going to slam that door shut for everybody else. So there was a lot of backlash to that tweet. And the Girl Scouts very quickly deleted that post and issued some statements saying it was not our intent to post anything viewed as a political and partisan statement, which is, I'm sure, something their publicity people told them to write. But it wasn't an apology, and it didn't at all address why girls should not be looking up to Amy Coney Barrett. So in their mad rush to celebrate a woman, any woman, they ignored the actual things that woman had pledged to do, including hurting other women. So that's the thing I'm starting to think about when I saw what happened this week, because one of the many, many nominations that the Trump people managed to shove through with the help of their Republican majority in the Senate is this dude. This is Russell Vought, and he just got confirmed as the director of the White House Office of Management and Budget. He gets power of the purse over a lot of things. And again, maybe you don't know what OMB does. That's fine. Maybe you don't know who this guy is. That's fine. But the thing about it is that what I'm showing you here is what Wheaton College posted about him on Facebook. I know it doesn't look like a typical Facebook post. There's a reason I don't have the actual screenshot because they quickly took it down. But this is one version of it. Wheaton College congratulates and praise for 1998 graduate Russell Vought regarding his senatorial confirmation to serve as the White House Director of the Office of Management and Budget. So they're congratulating one of their own who's now leading the OMB, and they want your prayers for him and all of that. Why would that be a problem? Because those of you who have paid closer attention to the news in recent years, might know that Russell Vought isn't some random dude. He's the Christian nationalist who spearheaded Project 2025. His goal is to decimate the government in ways that will cause unspeakable harm for so many people. And the only reason he was selected for this post at all is because he's a spineless conservative who will do whatever his Lord and Savior Donald Trump tells him to do. He didn't get this position because he knows how to crunch numbers. He got it because he only ever says yes to Donald Trump. Republicans didn't vote for him because he's qualified. They voted for him because they know the consequences of not supporting whatever Trump wants, no matter how unqualified his nominees are. So Russell Vought also led OMB for a small portion of Trump's first term, but he laid out exactly what he wants to do this time around in Project 2025. Among the many things he has said, this is from Forbes, Vaught's group has advocated for slashing billions of dollars from the government budget, including cuts to low-income assistance and education programs such as Head Start, a nearly $26 billion cut to the housing Department of Housing and Urban Development, so that would make it harder to build affordable housing, and $1.1 trillion in cuts to Medicaid for low-income people, and $766 billion in cuts to Medicare for the elderly over 10 years. So this guy's entire goal is to make life harder for poor people, sick people, the elderly, and people looking for affordable housing. That's Russell Vought for you. This is something he celebrated when he wrote Project 2025. And so the point is, right now, as you've seen in the news, the Constitution is being torn apart from the inside, and Russell Vought is one of the main reasons why. He wants to make it really easy for Trump to fire career civil servants who have dedicated their lives to running this country in ways that most Americans have no clue about because they're just sitting there doing their jobs, not marketing themselves on every podcast that you could find. And this guy wants to make it really easy for Trump to fire them because they're not obedient to him. So congratulating Russell Vought for being a graduate of your college is like Berkeley congratulating Ted Kaczynski for publishing a math paper. Like, I guess you could do it, technically, but maybe that guy's not worth celebrating no matter what he achieves. You know what I mean? And the thing is, many of Wheaton's graduates, who are not all fundamentalist evangelical Christians, many of whom run the gamut of like center-right evangelicals and moderate evangelicals and kind of sort of liberal-ish evangelicals who accept that gay people exist. All of these people were quick to point out Russell Vought is doing far more harm than good, and his affiliation with Wheaton College should be a source of embarrassment and not pride. And within about a day, Wheaton College took down that post and replaced it with this one. On Friday, Wheaton College posted a congratulations and call to prayer for an alumnus, no name mentioned, who received confirmation to a White House post. The recognition and prayer is something we would typically do for any graduate who reached that level of government. However, the political situation surrounding the appointment led to a significant concern expressed online. How's that for an understatement? It was not our intention to embroil the college in a political discussion or dispute. Blah, blah, blah. None of the rest of it matters. But they're not exactly apologizing. They're doing the Girl Scouts thing where they're just like, all right, we did a thing and our people didn't like it, so let's just forget it ever happened. All right, are we all good? The thing that made me laugh about this comment is, what is this thing like it was not our intention to embroil the college in a political discussion or dispute? Wheaton College does this all the time. They routinely get involved in political issues. Like a few years ago, they fired this professor or suspended this professor because she wore a hijab in solidarity with oppressed Muslims and said that Muslims and Christians worship the same God. And they're like, that makes Christianity not really special, so we're going to have to make sure you're never in front of students ever again. Is that not getting involved with a political controversy of sorts? Here is Wheaton College like a couple of weeks ago. This is Wheaton College celebrating students of theirs who went to the March for Life in Washington, D.C., the anti-abortion protest, even though I would argue that's extremely political and that it's extremely harmful because the right-wing justices and politicians have been pushing these anti-abortion policies that actively harm women. Wheaton College is celebrating that like it's no big deal whatsoever. How about, I mean, there was one more too. Oh, right. They continue to name a building on their campus after Billy Graham, the late evangelist who was notoriously homophobic and anti-Semitic. So does Wheaton College actually not want to get involved with politics? No, that's a lie. They get involved in politics all the time, and they absolutely honor people who shouldn't be honored and trash people who didn't do anything wrong because it suits their political agenda. So I don't get this idea that, all right, we shouldn't have done that because we didn't want to get embroiled in a political controversy. Yeah, they did. They do it all the time. They got embarrassed because even they didn't seem to realize how awful Russell Vought and this Republican administration is. So naturally, when they took down that first post, all these right-wing Christians were like, oh, what is this? This is cancel culture. How dare you? One of the people who chimed in is Franklin Graham, the even worse son of Billy Graham, whose entire MO is just finding any culture war issue he can find and then pouring, gasoline on it. This is Franklin Graham saying, what is this? The college posted congratulations and asked for prayer for him. That is tremendous. This is the school my father and mother attended. However, shockingly, after negative comments were made by some who were obviously just leftist Trump haters, the school deleted the post. Shame on them for backing down and having no backbone. You all saw all the things about how the Republican Party has cut U.S. aid and they've cut funding for missionary groups overseas that are actually doing good work to help poor people. Franklin Graham should be front and center in line, trashing the Trump administration for stopping Christian ministries who are actually doing really good work overseas in helping the poor. So this idea that Wheaton College has no backbone, Franklin Graham is spineless here. And then he says at the end, I wish the leadership of this Christian school would stand firm with what is right and not be intimidated or moved by the winds of wokeness. Worst Game of Thrones novels ever. I'll say it for them. Congratulations, Russ Vought. May God guide and use him in this important role. Franklin Graham. If Franklin Graham is the guy trashing you, you did something right. But he's lying because, I don't know, Jesus never taught Franklin Graham lying was a bad thing. It is funny that he compares Wheaton College graduates with leftist Trump haters. No. I am a leftist Trump hater. Wheaton graduates are like people who thought Kyrsten Sinema was a good senator and stuff. They are not leftist Trump haters. A lot of them, I guess I should take that back. Some of them are pretty firm Democrats and good for them. But like a lot of them pointed out that even if you don't like Trump, the stuff Trump is doing right now is actively hurting Christians. Religion News Service, Great Wire Service, they spoke to some of the people who lashed out against the post. And look at what some of them said here. This is one of the comments they highlighted. One Wheaton grad who has worked on foreign assistance inside and outside the federal government said she agreed with Wheaton's decision to delete their congratulatory post. There are Wheaton alumni out there who really do follow Jesus's teaching in the gospel, but they aren't always the ones who are powerful. And so it's incredibly frustrating to see those who I think don't necessarily embody the gospel taking power in the Trump administration. As an example, she cited Vaught's support of freezing foreign assistance and decision to shut down the CFPB, which protects consumers from predatory practices, as deeply against the letter and spirit of the whole biblical witness. So look, she's wrong about all the God stuff, but whatever. Her heart is in the right place. Good for her. She's saying, no, I'm not doing this because I'm a Trump hater. I'm doing this because what Russ Vought is doing is hurting Christians. Here's what another person said. Same article, by the way. One commenter responded that Vaught was not only working at cross purposes to Christian values, but to his fellow alums. The work that he is doing negatively and directly impacts countless other Wheaton alum who are seeking to be the hands and feet of Jesus in this country and around the rest of the world. So yes, this is why so many of those Wheaton grads were mad. Not because they're like super leftist, but because even they know that shutting down government aid hurts their own work. These are not leaders of the hashtag resistance. These are just people who think if you want to be like Jesus and help the least of these, then a guy who's trying to shut that down is not your friend. There were actually several other comments caught. This is from Baptist News, the Baptist News Global Wire Service, but they actually caught a few more of these comments that were much more in your face. Check this out. What? Give me a break. What about all the amazing young grads who are working for USAID and World Relief and are now out of a job because of this Christian nationalist administration? This is a ridiculous partisan post. This appointment should not be celebrated. Russ Vaught said in a speech, I want federal employees to be traumatized. I want them put in trauma. I want them to come to work to not want to come to work because they know that they are increasingly viewed as the villain. This does not exemplify the values I heard from my teachers when I was a student at Wheaton College in '64, nor does it represent the faculty I knew when I taught philosophy at Wheaton College in the mid-2010s. It is deplorable that a Wheaton College grad should make such a statement. And one more here. Celebrating an apostate, warmongering traitor to Christ is not a good look, Wheaton. He's an obvious mortal sin courting Trump and other nationalists in the name of Christ. Celebrating the public disgracing of Christ's name means you share his sin. Disgraceful. I don't know who that is, but I like that person. Well done. But again, this is the point. These are not leftists. These are people who are mad at Russell Vaught because he's bad for Christians. Again, no one outside fundamentalist Christian circles would ever accuse Wheaton grads of being too liberal, but what they are saying in this case is accurate. The Trump administration has actively made it harder for Christians working for ministries and NGOs to save lives all over the world. That's not a political attack. That's just reality. Plenty of Christians have faith-based reasons to work overseas, and they want to help people in really rough circumstances. And Vaught's appointment will actively harm their efforts because Russ Vaught wants to appease a wannabe dictator. If you're not mad about that, you're either actively promoting fascism or you're not paying attention. Pick a side. Now, one school that decided to chime in on all this is Hillsdale College, which is the right-wing Christian school in Michigan that's been like every Fox News right-wing podcaster's best friend. Like Ron DeSantis loves Hillsdale College because they write his right-wing curriculum stuff for him. But Hillsdale College, here's what they said in response to all this. They said, congrats, look at the first at the bottom here. Congratulations to Russ Vaught, the once and current OMB director, on his Senate confirmation. Then after the Wheaton stuff blew up, they said, trigger warning, we will not be deleting our earlier post congratulating Russ Vaught. Because the entire college is run by conservative trolls online. That's the only thing they're doing. So, I mean, kudos to the Wheaton graduates whose pressure led the school to take down its stupid post. I mean, they didn't even do anything worth commending. They just did the bare minimum by saying, yeah, we shouldn't have said that. Let's take it down. But the fact that that school, that Wheaton College, had anything to do with Russ Vaught's upbringing and the fact that he graduated from their school, that should be a source, a cause for shame for the school, for anyone who still goes there, for anyone whose diploma has Wheaton on it. They should all be ashamed that their school gave rise to Russ Vaught, right? And by the way, if you're wondering, what did Russ Vaught say to all this? In response to a post about this whole controversy, Russ Vaught, because he's trying to imitate Donald Trump at all times, here's what he said. He just responded saying, sad, with an exclamation point. Because that's his level of maturity for all this. Just a bunch of idiots, man. I mean, for what it's worth, sad would have been a far more appropriate message for Wheaton to publish along with Russ Vaught's confirmation, but There you go. Two groups of people who don't deserve a lot of praise going at it. And that's the only good news I have for you today. All right, I'm going to pause there. What other questions we got here? Russell Vaught is part of the Heritage Foundation. Yeah. Yes, I believe that is correct. I forgot what his exact position is with the Heritage Foundation, but yeah, he's part of that right wing group. I don't know if he ran it or he was something else, but yeah, they're the ones who put together Project 2025. There's a difference between celebrating a person and celebrating something they did. Seriously, celebrating a person who's about to do a lot of very, very horrible things, not a good idea. If he did anything worth celebrating, okay, let's hear it. But none of these people have yet. Pisses me off when Democrats are like, Elon Musk has some good ideas. Like, shut up. You're not helping. He doesn't. If he accidentally stumbles into a good idea, okay, but he's actively trying to destroy everything. Don't praise him for the bare minimum. I will never understand why Republicans hate poor people so much. Like, I know why. I just don't understand it. I think you answered your own question at Republicans hate. Their entire party is defined by everyone else. They don't like anyone who's not like them. That's it. So if you're poor, if you're a person of color, if you're a Democrat, you have a label they don't like, their entire MO is let's stick our entire cult against you and blame you for everything. I mean, I think JD Vance today, like, trashed Greta Thunberg in a speech overseas as if she's the bad guy in everything. Like, they're so desperate, they'll pick on young women trying to protect the environment instead of going after people who are actually doing harm. So, I mean, I don't that's the Republican Party that's been around as long as I've been politically cognizant. It's never been Republicans care about the poor or all the people Jesus cared about, Republicans are not for them. Appreciate your work. Agree that these nationalists are shooting Christians like me in the foot. Please keep up your work. Thanks for saying that. And yeah, I mean, if you're an evangelical Christian, about 80% of white evangelicals have voted for Trump in the past 3 elections. These are Trump is doing damage to their brand. They should be like leading the charge to not have Trump be the standard bearer for their preferred political party. And yet, because they so love it when like a white guy with confidence but no actual understanding of anything just says anything and gives them lip service, like that's what they do at church. That's what they want in church. They want a pastor who just says, I'm your daddy, I'll take care of you. And they'll just go along with everything. That's what Trump does. They just go along with it. And none of them, including pastors, very few pastors, have the courage to stand up and criticize any of this stuff, even when it's warranted. Even if you are a Republican, there's no lack of things to criticize, but none of these people have a spine. And I would imagine moderate Christians, liberal Christians, what have you, I I cannot imagine how angry you must be at that. Unfortunately, you're outnumbered. Oh, thank you for that donation there. I'm a Marine vet. Never thought they'd piss off those that know how to properly clear a room of people planning to destroy America. Vets get your disability appeals applications in now. No kidding. Sorry, won't bug you again tonight. No, I always welcome these comments. But yeah, I mean, this is the thing. Republican voters, they're going after their own base. The elderly will have less money for healthcare. They'll get less healthcare. They're going after military benefits. They're going after disability benefits. They're going after special ed programs at public schools. And why? Because they just think everything's a liberal conspiracy or something. So they're like, let's just shut it all down. What's the worst that could happen? And the answer is everything, but they're too cocky to understand that maybe there are people out there actually doing useful work. Oh, thank you. Yes, send me all your Valentines by signing up there. Let's get to one of these other stories here. Give me a second to pull this up and close these other tabs here. All right. All right. So here's a fascinating and disturbing story for you. Usually, when Republicans want to push Christian nationalist legislation, and I've talked about many examples of it on this show, we talk about bills promoting the 10 Commandments in public schools, right? We got to put them on every wall because that's what Jesus wants. And they'll always say it's not about promoting Christianity because that of course would not be okay. We're doing this because it's part of history and tradition. That's what the Supreme Court likes now, right? So they'll always argue the 10 Commandments have been around forever in public schools. That's why we need to put it up. And of course, these are not people who know anything about history, so they're wrong. But they'll also say, we got to go after trans people. We got to go after gay people. Why? Because it violates God's preferences as expressed in the Bible. That's the way they push Christian nationalist legislation. They say, historically, we're a Christian nation. They say God doesn't like some of the stuff we're doing by their interpretation, so we got to get rid of it. Rarely have I seen their hoods come off like they're doing in North Dakota right now, because they're not even trying to come up with some secular sounding justification for what they want to do. Let me show you this resolution Republicans just proposed. It's House Resolution 3020. And let's just go. It's only one page, but you can see this right here. House Concurrent Resolution 3020. Those are a whole bunch of Republican representatives pushing it. And let's see, what do they want us to do? A concurrent resolution urging North Dakota to acknowledge the kingship of Jesus Christ. We just want the state, like it's not even Christian Heritage Month like we talked about last week. This is just straight up, we want everyone in the state to acknowledge that our prophet is the right one and screw the rest of you. And look at these whereas clauses. Like, why should we acknowledge the kingship of Jesus? Well, we found something in a Bible verse. Here's another Bible verse. Oh, some other Bible. This is an interesting one. Look at line 6. Whereas the Father is said to give Christ all nations and the utmost parts of the earth for his inheritance and possession. And in response, people and their leaders are called to learn and receive instruction from him, according to the book of Psalms, chapter 2, verses 8 and 10. And I paused at that one because I'm like, I wonder what chapter 2, verse 9 says. And I went to go look it up, and it made me laugh. Because here's the book of Psalms, chapter 2, verses 8 through 10. Look at verse 9. You will break them with a rod of iron. You will dash them to pieces like pottery. And I think that is God talking to a bunch of kings, talking about anyone who stands in their way. So that's disturbing. But back to this resolution. What else do we got? Christ is named the ruler of kings on earth and the King of kings in a bunch of sections of Revelation, which is the most sane book of the Bible. And then at the very bottom here. So what do we resolve? That North Dakota acknowledge the kingship of Jesus Christ over all the world, so that this great state may at last receive the great blessings of real liberty, well-ordered discipline, peace, and harmony. Look at the wording there. It's very weird. Not even the Jesus Christ thing. But we need to do this so that North Dakota may at last receive liberty, discipline, peace, and harmony. That suggests North Dakota currently has 0 of those things, which I think is a self-own on their part. Like, wow, we really live in a really shitty state right now, but if we pass this resolution, everything will get better. I'm not sure that's a strong campaign message if you're looking for patriotism in the state. But this whole resolution, as you could see, it just boils down to them saying the Bible is true because the Bible says the Bible is true. That's their whole argument. So I don't know if I should be more upset as an atheist because it's ridiculous to acknowledge the kingship of Jesus Christ. I don't know if I'm more upset as an atheist or someone who just wants to live in a democracy, because what the hell are we even doing here? Like, the kingship part is just as troubling as the Jesus Christ bit, but both of them together, that is extremely disturbing. So is this resolution unconstitutional? Yeah, of course it is. But Republicans have made it clear they don't give a damn about the Constitution if it gets in the way of their religious agenda. And the fact that this resolution is symbolic and carries no legal weight and wouldn't actually change anything, that is irrelevant because the symbolism is the point. This is a way for white conservative Christians in North Dakota to remind everyone across the state that only their religion counts. Religious pluralism, that is a joke. Non-Christians are second-class citizens in North Dakota. Honestly, even Christians who don't agree with them are considered enemies to these Republicans. So these guys are like throwing their hands up in surrender. Also, when they say we want to pass this resolution in order to defend liberty and peace and all that stuff, they're basically saying, well, we can't do that because what are we? We're just legislators. We don't know how to create peace or good laws. We need Jesus for all that. I don't know. I live in a blue state, and states that are not run by Republicans do a lot of these things pretty damn well. So I don't know. Maybe you look to them instead of your Bible. So, a couple other things about this resolution. It was introduced by 12 Republicans in North Dakota. 5 of them have already made headlines because they sponsored a different bill you may have heard of, trying to condemn marriage equality and urge the Supreme Court to overturn the Obergefell ruling. So that's disturbing. And the main guy in charge of this particular bill, his name is Nico Rios, and he's a nut job who recently said this in response. Let me pull this up here for a second. He recently said this when Trump was trying to pass those tariffs against Mexico. The Mexican president, Claudia Sheinbaum, she responded like, no, you're not doing tariffs in Mexico. We'll do retaliatory tariffs. And this guy, Nico Rios, this is what he tweeted in response to that. I swear, I know it looks like I'm quoting a spam bot there, oil field rocket. This is a state lawmaker in North Dakota. And the headline that he's quoting says Mexico's president announces retaliatory tariffs on the United States. And what does this lawmaker say? When some third world leader wouldn't go along with Clinton, Bush, Obama, that's just stupidly racist, the CIA would just start a color revolution and overthrow them. Wonder if the CIA would help Trump overthrow and kick this Jew out of power in Mexico. Probably not. Can Doge or Elon do this? LMAO. So this lawmaker is responding to the president of Mexico by calling her this Jew. That's the sort of dude who's now saying we need to acknowledge the kingship of Jesus Christ. Like, it shouldn't surprise anybody that the same dude who's like, you know who's a good Christian? I am. It shouldn't surprise anybody that that dude is also anti-Semitic and a conspiracist and a bigot. I don't know. Maybe it's the DUI he got last year talking here. But either way, this is the dude who's pushing this bill. I found this interesting too. When a local journalist asked him about that tweet and said, do you think it's appropriate to call the president of Mexico a Jew? Here's Nico Rios responding to that journalist. You're an atheist, he added. This is something I have acknowledged over the years in my work. Do you think it's okay if people call you an atheist? Nico Rios seriously said, it's okay for me to call her a Jew because you're an atheist, and isn't it okay if someone calls you an atheist? It's like, dude, the problem isn't that she's actually Jewish and you called her that. It's the way you said it. We all know how you said it. Rios didn't give me a chance to answer that during our conversation, saying he was at the gym and had to go. He was not at the gym, you guys. For the record, I don't think it's a bad thing if people refer to me as an atheist because that is what I am. I do think that if someone used it as an out-of-context appellation, I don't even know how to pronounce that word, apropos of nothing, they would be using it pejoratively. So the reporter's like, yeah, it's fine if you call me an atheist, but not if you're like, oh, you atheist, which I totally get and does make sense. I also appreciate the way the Democratic Party in North Dakota, all 4 of them, they responded to this as, I like how they responded to this. We know Nico Rios is a lawbreaker and a bigot. We learned that when we called on him to resign last year when he insulted a police officer in a drunken tirade. Now we will find out who the people of Williston are. As a Fargoan, I could not be more proud of the Democratic legislators who represent me. Are the people of Williston proud of theirs? Is the Republican Party proud? Is this who they are? If not, what will they do about it? I can answer that for you, Laura. The answer is yeah, this is who the Republican Party is. This is who they celebrate. Every single person who votes for a Republican says guys like this are okay with them. Every single one of them. Doesn't matter if they're like, well, I wish he wouldn't say that. Well, too bad. He's yours. You support him if you vote Republican. So I don't know. If they disagree, they can condemn it. They won't do it. And again, the thing that's most disturbing about not his tweet even, but the pro-Christianity resolution this guy is sponsoring is that the Republican Party did not dismiss it out of hand immediately. Because rather than admitting it has no place in secular government, a whole bunch of other Republicans said, how do we sign up to be co-sponsors of this bill? So this is what they're doing in North Dakota because, I don't know, they got nothing better to do, apparently. All right, I'm going to stop there for this story. What other questions we got here? This this is America. We don't have kings. That is what I was also taught. But apparently the 2024 election says otherwise. It's a myth that the leading Republicans right now have a religious agenda. They're only using religion to try and support their greedy economic agenda. I don't know if I believe that. I think they really do believe, like Mike Johnson really does believe his religious agenda and the Republican Party's agenda are intertwined. I don't think he's lying when he wears his Christianity on his sleeve. I think this is how they have morphed Christianity. It's just into a let's hurt as many people as possible. And that's the big thing. That's what the overlap of the Venn diagram is between right-wing Christians and the Republican Party. They just love using their beliefs to hurt other people. And in Trump, they found a guy that eggs them on. And Elon Musk loves doing it too. And so both of these groups are pushing their own agendas, but their agenda is let's use our beliefs to hurt people. And it turns out they agree on which group should get hurt. Unless I hear more white evangelical Christians actively protesting against what this government is doing, there is no reason they should be allowed to not be criticized for what's going on. I sincerely hope that there is backlash to what Trump is doing now and to the party for the future. And I hope that backlash hits evangelical Christians as well. They deserve it. I mean, I hope people start running away from that religious label in years to come because of how Trump has hijacked it. Supreme Court made Biden and Trump kings. No, they didn't. I don't even know what that's talking about. They didn't make Biden anything. There hasn't been a liberal majority Supreme Court in a good 50 years. And even that one definitely did not make a Democrat king. So I don't know what that's supposed to mean. I guess if you're saying they have immunity, fine. But that's clearly just for Donald Trump because he can get away with stuff. Again, even if they said presidents have immunity to do whatever they want, and it applies to Democrats, you know as well as I do that if a Democrat ever acted like a Republican, this Supreme Court would find a way to stop it. Because their rules are not meant to be applied across the board. They're meant to apply to to stop Democrats from doing anything they're doing and to let Republicans get away with anything they want. I'm wondering if everything going on is the start of a true American theocracy or the beginning of the end of the evangelical stronghold. Are those the only two options? I don't even think it's a start of a theocracy. It's more like Republicans are just taking, even though they're a minority in terms of vote count, like Trump didn't get 50% of the votes. And even though they represent in the Senate a much smaller minority of the country than Democrats do, even though they have fewer seats in the Senate, they're just trying to use their power to cling to that power as much as possible. So it's not a lack of an evangelical stranglehold. I think they're trying to keep whatever power they still have so that no one else can get it. And I don't know that they would call that a theocracy so much, but they will definitely use religion if it helps them achieve that goal. Thanks for researching this. Unfortunately, it is what I do. All right. I'm going to jump to a different story. Let me pull this up in a second. This is a totally different bill that is horrible. Okay, you may have seen this headline today or yesterday coming out of Alabama. And the reason you may have heard about it is because they just had a hearing about it. But Alabama Republicans have just introduced a bill that would not only force children in school to recite a Christian prayer every day, or at least make their school say we're going to recite a prayer every day, it would threaten those public school districts. It would threaten them by withholding the funding they need if they didn't pressure students to say this stuff. That's how disturbing this is. I'm going to show you this bill here. This is House Bill 231. It's 5 pages and it's kind of repetitious, but let me scroll down to like the actual wording here. They want to add an amendment to the Constitution of Alabama, last revised in 2022. And look at this, because they spell it out here. What do they want to do? They want to require local boards of education to adopt policies requiring every K to 12 school to recite the Pledge of Allegiance and a prayer consistent with Judeo-Christian values at the commencement of each school day. Let's just pause there for a second. They want to force every school district to adopt a policy that requires every school to say the Pledge of Allegiance and some Judeo-Christian prayer. Why? I don't know. We'll get back to that. Then they want to provide for the report and investigation of violations. They want to make sure it's really easy for people to rat on school districts that don't do this. And then they want to require the state superintendent to withhold state funding allocated to certain offending local boards of education. So if you don't force kids to say the pledge and the prayer, they could take away your funding. And then they want to authorize the legislature to further reduce funding upon continued violations. Unfreaking believable. Then you have the writing of that down here. The only part I would draw your attention to here, because I read you most of it, they just say we want a prayer representative of the Judeo-Christian values upon which the United States was founded. They don't actually spell out a prayer. They just say we want a prayer that's Judeo-Christian, and it's about the values. Well, let's see. When was the United States founded? We're talking 1776 or something. What was going on then? The Judeo-Christian values said slavery's cool. The Judeo-Christian values said women should not be allowed to vote. I'm not sure what values you want us to honor from the nation's founding. But then it gets more specific in the actual wording here. Suspected violations of this section may be reported to the Alabama State Superintendent of Education, and upon the receipt of a reported violation, the State Department of Education shall investigate the alleged violation. If the state superintendent, based on the results in the investigation, determines that a local board of education or any school has shown a continued pattern of intentional refusal to comply, look at this. The state superintendent shall withhold 25% of the state funding allocated to that local board of education for the following fiscal year. If you don't force all of your schools to say the pledge and the prayer, we're going to take away a quarter of your budget. And if you keep not doing it, the legislature can take away even more. That is what they are trying to pass now in Alabama. It is unbelievably insane. And by the way, saying the Pledge of Allegiance and a Christian prayer, that's just saying 2 Christian prayers. Because the only reason all these Christians want to say the Pledge of Allegiance now is because it has under God in it. So they really just want 2 prayers. And to tell school districts that the state's going to deprive you of necessary resources if you don't play along, that is just educational blackmail. Alabama.com, AL.com, the newspaper, they pointed out that in Birmingham, one of the biggest cities in Alabama, Birmingham City Schools receive around $158 million in state funding per year. So if they were found to violate this rule, if it passed, they could lose close to $40 million a year in annual funding. And I'm telling you, as someone who has worked in a school district, that sort of thing would be a blow to the children. It would result in teachers getting fired. None of this would help kids. I also found this interesting. When Republicans talked about this in a committee hearing, they made it clear, like, you guys, we're not forcing kids to say a Christian prayer because it's voluntary. Like, they made that clear. Kids are not forced to say a prayer, except we talked about this with the Pledge of Allegiance. If your whole class is saying the Pledge of Allegiance and you as a high schooler or grade schooler don't want to, what options do you have? You could stay seated, and then everyone in the class is like, oh yeah, there's Hemant, the kid who's staying seated during the pledge. Let's make fun of him. You could stand up and not say it, but that's the same thing. You could exit the classroom, so you're ostracized even more. And with the Christian prayer, if you use any of those options, what you're doing is painting a target on your back so that other kids, especially in a state like Alabama that is overwhelmingly Christian, you are making it easier for those kids to bully you. So what this legislation would do, if this amendment were to pass, is just make life more miserable for non-Christian students and Christians who don't want to participate in this little charade of theirs. And again, which Judeo-Christian prayers are going to qualify? Who's writing them? Who's delivering them? Who gets to decide which values are represented here, considering the Judeo-Christian values from 1776 are not necessarily ones anyone ought to be emulating? I also found I was hoping to watch the hearing about this that took place earlier this week, and I did watch it. And what shocked me about the hearing is when the sponsor of this bill, his name is Reed Ingram, he's the Republican who sponsored this bill, he would get up in front of the committee and you would give a little speech and you would say, this is the bill I'm introducing and here's why I'm introducing it. And I want this committee's support and I'm ready to take your questions. I'm going to show you his entire speech in defense of this bill. Are you ready for this? This is the entire speech he made about this bill. Here you go. Let's watch it together.
Thank you, Chairman. This bill is pretty simple. It just puts prayer and the pledge back into school, and it holds the schools responsible to make sure it happens. Any questions?
That's it. That was 11 seconds by my count. Like, he did not want to talk about the specifics of this bill that would completely change up how they do education in Alabama. Because I think even he knows this is a horrible idea, but I really want to get it through, and I hope there's as little attention to this as possible. He was eventually asked some follow-up questions, for example, and I'm paraphrasing, why the hell do we need this? And his responses were pathetic. This is what he said. One of the reasons he offered when one of the lawmakers asked him about it, he said, while student participation is optional, the law was, Here's what he said in the yellow part. Our recruiting is down for the National Guard. It's down in every branch of the military. A lot of these kids don't understand what the flag is. Listen, if they don't know what the flag is, then maybe their schools should educate them instead of wasting time to say a prayer. But also, none of these Republicans seem to have ever thought about, why don't people want to join the military? Maybe it's because our country does a lot of shitty things and you don't want to go overseas to fight on behalf of a country that's doing so many horrible things. It also never occurs to these Republicans that maybe more people would sign up for the military and have more patriotism and love America more if they passed laws that actually gave people reasons to love this country. Like, their proposed solution to a lack of patriotism is never, let's do things that make people proud of this country. It's always, well, who cares? Let's just force them to say they love this country. Let's coerce children into saying that they pledge allegiance to this flag. Like, if Saudi Arabia pledged allegiance to their flag and they made every kid say that at school every day, we would call it indoctrination. But when we do it in America, it's called like, oh, it's just patriotism. It's fine. These Republicans never do anything to actually make people want to love this country. Ingram also said, separately from that stupid line about the military, he said, I think it would help on crime. That he thought saying the pledge and the prayer would help with crime. No citation provided. I have no idea how it's going to help. He just said it because he's too dumb to think of actual reasons. So there's nothing legal or ethical about any of this. It's a constitutional crisis waiting to happen. But of course, this is the problem that Republicans want to create because the alternative is improving education and improving public education. And Republicans hate that. They definitely don't want to do anything that will benefit public education. I will tell you the Freedom from Religion Foundation is aware of this bill, and this is what they said in response to it. This bill is an outrageous attempt to impose religion on captive public school students, even as young as 5, says FFRF co-president Annie Laurie Gaylor. Public schools exist to educate, not to evangelize. Religious instruction should be left to the home where it belongs. And that is a fair point. One of the other things FFRF pointed out, correctly so, is that in 1962, there was a Supreme Court case, Engel v. Vitale, that struck down government-mandated prayer in school. And that Supreme Court precedent has held strong for the past 50, 60 years, has not been overturned by this court. Honestly, I'm not sure if even this conservative court would go so far as to overturn it. So despite what Ingram said, none of this is legal. And allowing voters to have the final say on it, because this would be a constitutional amendment, and he pushed that because I think it removes him from taking responsibility over this, that would not overturn the Supreme Court precedent. So it could still be illegal. So there's a lot of steps that have to happen for this bill to become part of the state constitution. Most of them just require Republicans looking the other way. So those hurdles will be very easy to overcome. But I just want to point out, schools are not clamoring for this. Teachers are not asking lawmakers, hey, you know what we need to do at the beginning of the school day? Waste a little more time by making a whole bunch of kids very uncomfortable. No one is asking for this. And I know nobody expects anything useful from like the Alabama legislature, but this is a new low, even for them. It's a desperate attempt to shove Christianity into classrooms by wasting time and alienating a whole bunch of students, and then punishing school districts that dare to stand up for the kids they represent. In case you were wondering, by the way, Alabama is currently ranked 45th in the country when it comes to education, and they will not rest until they are number 50. Stupid Republicans in this case. Let's stop there. What questions do we have about this? It's infuriating stuff. If that isn't indoctrination, I don't know what is. Oh, just you wait, Raven, until I get to the next stories. Everything's about indoctrination these days. Compelled speech is unconstitutional. You know that. I know that. Republicans choose not to know that. It's always censorship unless they have to force you to say the thing, and then it's totally fine. I don't know. I don't get their logic because there is none. Oh my God, they flagrantly disregard the freaking Constitution. Folks, they're testing the waters. If there's no pushback, it'll settle into law. I hope the ACLU is all over this. I think if this proposed legislation overcomes any sort of hurdles, I imagine this is one of those cases that every single church-state separation group will be working together on to defeat. And I don't think they would have a particularly hard time defeating it. Even as it makes its way to the Supreme Court. Knowing punk me, it's creating atheist radicals. You mean like a bill like this that would force people to pray in school? And then the question is, if you're trying to say Judeo-Christian prayers, but you don't tell people what to say, that opens the door to like malicious compliance. What ways are people going to cite Judeo-Christian values in ways that really make the adults uncomfortable? Because if you want to like cite a section of the Bible, there's a lot of them that are very disturbing. Like, let's go read from some of those. Let's talk about what some of those Christians from the 1700s thought about Black people and women. Let's start saying that stuff. Let's see how that goes. And you can thank a Republican near you for that. They say Judeo-Christian, but you just know they aren't that attached to the Judeo part. I'm not the first one to say this. Someone else said this on social media today, to me anyway. But it is kind of stunning that more Jewish organizations have not actively gone after that label, the Judeo-Christian label, whenever Christian nationalists use it, saying, like, keep our religion out of your mouth. I don't care if it's not like they have dibs on it necessarily, but just pointing out, like, stop dragging us in as if you think you're inclusive. You're not. We know what you're doing. And I don't know why more Jewish organizations are not speaking out against this. Can they please actually concentrate on actual issues and stop this circus? Listen, if you live in Alabama and you can run for local office, please go do it, because otherwise these idiots are the ones who get elected. And the problem is none of them know what they're doing, but they're the only ones who ever run. And all the smart people I know always have self-doubt. It's what makes them so smart. And so they're never the ones who run. But no, actually concentrating on actual issues is not why you become a Republican politician. So, sorry, they don't know what you're talking about. Why doesn't the whole GOP just go home and pray for crime to stop? Think of the police funding and gun funding that could be saved. I'm right there with you. I mean, why don't they just pray for Elon Musk to find money to save instead of firing everybody whose jobs they don't actually understand? Because none of these people actually believe in prayer. They just know they got to say that stuff, unless you're like Mike Johnson, in which case you think prayer actually works and you're bad at your job. So again, there's that mix. There's a lot of Republicans who are like, I know I got to use the language of religion. I don't have to believe a word of it. Oh, thanks for that donation. Your channel and blog are amazing. Keep it up. Well, thank you for watching. I appreciate that. Give Den a Valentine. Yes, all of you, go do that right now. Here's a interesting story for you. Okay, let me pull this up for a second. This is a good news story, kind of, at the very end, all right? I may have talked about this on this channel, but it's been a long time, and I don't know how many of you were around then, so I'm going to talk about this. 2 years ago, there was a teenage girl in South Carolina who sued her school district, and she said she was physically assaulted by a teacher because she did not say the Pledge of Allegiance. And her family sued over all of this. And the reason I want to bring it up to you is because this case just saw its ending after 2 years. It's been in my head this entire time, and I was so excited to see that there's finally some resolution to it. But if you don't know what I'm talking about, let me share this with you. What happened 2 years ago is that there was a girl who's 15 years old. Her name is Marissa Barnwell, and I'm saying her name because her family went public with all this. And Marissa is a Black girl who is an honor roll student at River Bluff High School in South Carolina. And what happened is that she said she was walking to her class on her birthday in November of 2022. And I don't know why she was late to class, if there was something going on in the morning, but she was walking to class, and all of a sudden the Pledge of Allegiance starts playing over the school's intercom. Now, if you're in the classroom, everyone's supposed to stand and say the pledge, but South Carolina says you don't have to stand, you don't have to say it, you just got to not be disruptive, and that's fine. But she was in the hallway, so when the pledge starts playing, she just keeps walking to class. And apparently, other students were walking in the hallway too, but she was the only one singled out by a teacher named Nicole Livingston. And this is what they said in the lawsuit. Let me share this with you. That Marissa continued to walk silently in a non-disruptive manner to her class throughout the remainder of the Pledge of Allegiance and into the call to remain standing for a moment of silence. When Marissa was walking to her class, defendant Nicole Livingston violated Marissa's constitutional rights by yelling and demanding that Marissa stop walking and physically assaulting her by pushing Marissa on the wall and forcefully touching her in an unwanted way without her consent so that she would stop walking in recognition of the Pledge of Allegiance and moment of silence that was announced at the conclusion of the pledge. So that's the allegation that was made against this teacher. Really disturbing stuff. And, you know, you would think, wow, this is going to be even more disturbing if there was video footage. And it turns out there was video footage. I'm not going to play it for you, mostly because there's no audio and it's really grainy. But in the video footage, like the security camera footage from the school, you could see the teacher basically doing what that lawsuit said, pushing Marissa against the wall. Now, the lawsuit also pointed out that the principal, she was taken to the principal's office, and the principal, Jacob Smith, said he's going to review video footage, but he never actually pointed out that what Marissa did by just walking was legal. He just apparently offered her some food and sent her back to class. He never even called her parents, not at the time and not even after they filed the lawsuit. And so in March of 2023, they held a press conference. The family held a press conference with their lawyer, and the whole family spoke out about this. Here's what they said at the time. "I was just in disbelief," Marissa Barnwell said. "You can hear me say in the video, 'Get your hands off of me.' When Barnwell told the principal, Smith, what happened, he told her that he would review the video footage and send her back to class. She called her mother in tears. I was completely and utterly disrespected," Barnwell said at a news conference Thursday. "No one has apologized. No one has acknowledged my hurt. The fact that the school is defending that kind of behavior is unimaginable." So very disturbing. I mean, yeah, very disturbing. I would also point out that her parents were shocked to learn what happened, and since that time, they've been demanding accountability from the school. They said that accountability never came, and one of the reasons they filed the lawsuit is because they said the school was creating an unreasonable risk of harm to students. I don't know if Livingston, that teacher, even works at that school anymore, but there's no indication to me she was ever punished in any meaningful way. And this is another thing to point out here. This is also from the lawsuit. Check this out. "Notwithstanding actions taken by Nicole Livingston in assaulting Marissa and violating her constitutional rights, the school district, the superintendent, and the principal continued to employ and retain Nicole Livingston, took no measures to ensure she was not allowed to assault students or continue to force, demand, coerce, or attempt to force, coerce, or demand students into reciting the pledge or engaging in conduct she deems fit during the moment of silence, nor did they take any measures to ensure the safety, security, and constitutional rights of students wishing to exercise their First Amendment rights during the Pledge of Allegiance." So the school district did nothing, is the point of all this. So this was not about protecting Marissa's right to not say the pledge. This family was interested in protecting students from the adults who were supposed to look out after them. And that's before you even consider the racial element to all this. River Bluff is a school where roughly 3/4 of the students are white. And Marissa believed she was singled out, even though she wasn't the only student walking in the hallways. She was singled out because she's Black. And she said during the press conference that her Black friends had experienced similar feelings of racism over the years, though none involved the teacher physically assaulting them. So this is why they sued. They sued the school district for being negligent, careless, reckless, grossly negligent. They said the district violated Marissa's civil rights and the First Amendment, and they wanted actual, incidental, consequential, and punitive damages, right? And by the way, I know this is not important, but in case you're wondering, why doesn't Marissa say the Pledge of Allegiance? Is it because of under God? The answer is no. She actually told reporters during that press conference that once she realized that a lot of people in this country do not have liberty and justice for all, she decided she did not want to say the pledge, which is amazing of her. By the way, that's a reason that a lot of Black students over the decades have given for not wanting to say the pledge. So why do I bring all this up? I bring this up because finally, this week, the two sides decided to settle the case. They decided they didn't want this to go to court or a trial or whatever. And they decided to just, let's deal with this privately. And one of the things I found interesting, before I tell you what the settlement was, is there were things said in their settlement agreement I did not know about beforehand. Check this out. Defendant Livingston then escorted Marissa to the office of the principal. I'll come back to this. Remember what we learned before. We said Marissa was taken to the principal's office. The principal said he would review the video footage, then sent her on her way. Look at what the settlement agreement points out. Defendant Smith questioned Marissa about her patriotism, asking her if she loved her country. Defendant Smith effectively held Marissa in his office, pressuring her to abandon her silent objection to the pledge. Efforts that both punished Marissa's lawful exercise of her constitutional rights and served to chill her future actions. I did not know any of that before, but it seems like the principal's the bad guy in all this too. What the hell is that guy doing? So anyway, what did the two sides decide? They decided, and I'll show you this right here, that the school district will pay a total sum of $75,000 to the Barnwells. The district is going to pay that family $75,000, and the family agrees to drop the case after that. That's the bottom line. And if you read the fine print of that settlement agreement, it said about $47,000 will be set aside for Marissa for when she turns 18, and the rest of it is going to pay for their legal fees. So there you go. It is some measure of justice for what the district put Marissa through and her family through, but the settlement does not include any formal apology from the school district. Nothing from the teacher or the principal. There's no acknowledgement that any of those people did anything wrong. And as of right now, last I checked, the school district has not issued any sort of statement about this settlement at all. I think they were just hoping no one would notice and it would all go away. So I'm making this video to hopefully show them, nope, still paying attention. What you did was wrong. I did reach out to the family's attorney to see if he had any comment about the settlement or if the family had anything to say. He did not respond to me. So, I mean, I wish the best to Marissa and her family. I appreciate that they fought this, and I'm glad they got. I hope this settlement is to their liking and that it provides some measure of justice for the family. Okay, I'm going to stop there with this story. What questions we got here? You mean Karen Livingston? I don't know if I like that. Like, I don't know if I need to, as someone with a name that can easily get made fun of, we don't need to do that. But I was curious what that lady was doing, Nicole Livingston. Like, I couldn't find her in the district, like, yellow pages, and I don't actually know what she's doing now. I don't know if she ever got any consequences for being involved in this. I don't know. By the way, she was a special ed teacher. I don't know if she's still doing that either. When I read Hammond's article about this, I kept asking why Livingston was not charged with assault. Regardless of the reason for the physical contact, it's assault. Yeah, it's a fair point, and I don't know the answer to that because the school has been very hush-hush about it. They're allowed to be, but like, it's an employee thing. We're taking care of it. I don't know what the reason is. If you go to The State, which is the name of the newspaper that covered this story, they're the ones that had the video, the grainy footage, and I don't know how that teacher just got off without any punishment, but I don't know what it would be. People like her should not be teaching. Agreed. Hell, they should not be allowed to be around children in any capacity. I totally agree with you, and that's why it was so disturbing. She's not just a teacher. She's a special ed teacher. She works with vulnerable students to begin with, and if that's how you're acting, I don't even care if it was at school. If I found out that's how this lady was acting at home with her own kids, I would be disturbed. So I don't know what the school was thinking. Is it true that Utah made a law that allows the Confederate flag and the Nazi swastika flag can be displayed in schools? I did read a headline about that, but I'll be honest, I was gone most of today and I did not get to look into that. So I'm going to ignore your question because I don't have enough information on it. But I did see that headline that pride flags are not allowed, but a Republican said like Nazi flags are allowed. I don't know what the hell he was saying, but I'm very curious to learn more about it soon. All right. Please go sign up for the newsletter. I got a couple more stories for you here. They might be relatively short ones. Let's go back to North Carolina. I'm going to start that over. Let's go back to North Dakota for a moment. This is the same state that just said they want us to honor and acknowledge the kingship of Jesus Christ. Well, one of the other bills that I noticed North Dakota was pushing, the Republicans in North Dakota are pushing, is a one-page bill. It's Senate Bill 2355. And I'm just going to let you read this one for yourself because it's very short. They want to add a little section to the state law. And here it is. Intelligent design required science content standard. The entire law, the entire bill. Let's read it. The superintendent of public instruction shall include, not could if you want to, but must include intelligent design in the state science content standards for elementary, middle, and high school students by August of 2027. The superintendent shall provide teachers with instructional materials demonstrating intelligent design is a viable scientific theory for the creation of all life forms and provide in-service training necessary to include intelligent design as part of the science content standards. They want intelligent design in science class. I thought we were done with this. Apparently, I was wrong. Like, West Virginia tried doing this shit a year ago, and even West Virginia Republicans are like, well, we want intelligent design and creationism in schools, but we know we can't say that, so why don't we just make it optional? That if teachers want to teach intelligent design, this bill allows them to do it. And even West Virginia was like, we can't actually say intelligent design has to be in class. But in North Dakota, they're like, nope, let's force teachers to lie to kids. Like, what the hell are they doing? I know you all know this, but for the sake of people who are not familiar with this particular legal battle, intelligent design is not a viable scientific theory. It is not viable. It's not scientific. And if you want to call it a theory, it's not a scientific theory. It's just a batshit lunatic theory. It's one that says creationism is true. God poofed the world into existence. God poofed men and women into existence. But since we're not allowed to say God did it, why don't we just say something did it? And that's scientific, right? That's literally all intelligent design is. It's saying, hey, we're dumb and we don't know stuff. What if we just said something made all of us so that kids don't think evolution has any validity to it? That's what intelligent design is. It's creationism under a pseudonym, right? It's creationism wearing a trench coat and a fake mustache. And if students have a science teacher who desperately wants to lie to kids, I mean, that teacher has no place being in a classroom. The fact that this bill's sponsors are this confused about intelligent design being a scientific theory is a sign that their own schools have failed them. And the bill doesn't even define what intelligent design is. It just assumes we all know what it is. So again, it stands in direct opposition to evolution. It is religious mythology. The whole goal of intelligent design is to shove God into science classrooms using a legal framework that says, well, evolution is a theory and it hasn't proved everything. So wherever there are gaps, let's say God did it, or maybe some higher power did it, and we'll just call it that. I mean, the goal is to destroy science education by demanding teachers lie to kids. If this bill were to pass, you can bet there will be lawsuits filed because intelligent design, all the people who push for intelligent design, they've already lost this battle in the federal courts years ago. Like, what was it, 2005 we were doing this? And they lost that battle in court. And what happened 20 some years ago is that when intelligent design was deemed illegal and unconstitutional, because of course it's just shoving God in the classroom, what the intelligent design people did is they said, we're not allowed to use creationism. We're not allowed to use intelligent design. Why don't we push bills that say, let's teach the strengths and weaknesses of various scientific theories? And they thought they could get around it that way. And some of them, I don't know if they have or not. But part of the reason I laughed at this bill is because these idiots in North Dakota aren't even doing the whole strengths and weaknesses thing. They're just like, oh, we didn't get the memo. We're still pushing intelligent design. Like, no one told them because they haven't figured out how the internet works in North Dakota yet or something. the National Center for Science Education, really good group. This is something they brought to my attention. And one thing they point out is that they tried this in 2019 in North Dakota. It would have allowed the misrepresentation of science in the classroom, but that bill was filed and then withdrawn in the space of 8 days. So they tried to get intelligent design in 2019, and then the bill's sponsor a week later is like, let's not do this. And I don't know what the reason was, but now they're trying it again. And that should be disturbing. For what it's worth, in case you're wondering, public school teachers can already talk about different scientific theories in the classroom, as long as they are scientific theories. What they can't do is lie to students by saying that if there's any gap in our scientific knowledge about anything, it is plausible that some higher power must have done it. That's just making shit up. That is intelligent design in a nutshell. So this bill is co-sponsored by like half a dozen other Republicans. And as far as I can tell, not a single one of them so far has tried to defend this bill on social media anywhere or to the media. So right now, this bill is in the North Dakota Senate's Education Committee. And if we're lucky, it will just die there too. And I know some of you are pointing this out. 100 years ago is when we were doing the Scopes monkey trial. So it's the 100th anniversary, and we are still having the same stupid debates that are being pushed by the same ignorant people. Oh, what questions we got there. Oh, that's like teaching flat earth in school. No kidding. It's just why would we waste our time telling kids about something that has no scientific merit just because a handful of idiots happen to believe it? Like, that is not a good reason to waste time in the science curriculum. Why are they waiting till fall of 27? Does it take that long to put together that kind of curriculum? I think it might if they're talking about training sessions, in-school trainings, but also I think they're hoping that they probably know they're going to get sued over it. They want to make sure that if they said fall of 2026, like the next school year, that only gives them a handful of months to get all this shit together. So they're saying, let's wait a year and a half to just ride everything out. Maybe by then, Donald Trump will have destroyed the entire court system and we're just done with the judicial branch of government in this country, and then it'll be easier for us to pass this. I don't know what their thinking is. It's the 100th anniversary year for the Scopes monkey trial. Yes, I hope you all had a lovely Darwin Day, because clearly that's the most important holiday this week. Inherit the Wind was a pebble in my shoe, keeping me from full belief. That is a wonderful movie. If you've never seen it before, go find it somewhere. I'm sure it's on YouTube, the whole thing. But really, really good movie. And the amazing thing is when they do like the trial courtroom debate scene, those debates are still how a bunch of creationists debate evolution. It's still that dumb. Ken Ham tweets that shit out every day. They haven't improved one bit on that side of the aisle. All right, I got one more story for you here. I haven't posted this online yet, but I did want to share this with you here. Give me 1 second to pull it up. Okay. There's an Oklahoma state senator. His name is David Bullard, and he's one of those Christian nationalists who thinks his entire purpose in the legislature is to force his religion on everyone else in Oklahoma. So he's a guy who's already filed a bill I've talked about to put up 10 Commandments monuments inside and outside the state capitol, even though none of that is legal. But the thing I wanted to talk about is his latest attempt to push mythology on children under the guise of history. Is trying to do this 10 Commandments thing. He's talking about a bill, talking about, you know how Ryan Walters in Oklahoma tried to get Bibles in public schools, and then he purchased like 500 Trump Bibles for AP, was it economics teachers to use in the classroom or something? Well, this dude is saying it is wonderful that we are trying to shove Bibles into the classroom. But he added, We have to be careful about that, though, because it is possible that even if we succeed in Oklahoma at getting the Bible into schools, we might have some atheist teaching those classes, and this could backfire on us. This is something he actually said in an interview. And let me give you some background on this interview thing. This week, he appeared on the Wall Builders show, which is a show hosted by David Barton, a notorious Christian liar whose whole shtick is, I know what the founding fathers were thinking, and it turns out they all agreed with me about Christianity. And then he takes quotations out of context to suggest that the founders totally created this country on a Christian foundation, and it's all a lie. And historians who actually understand what they're doing point out why it's a lie. There's a wonderful podcast by Warren Throckmorton about the Jefferson lies that David Barton spews. But this dude, Bullard, David Bullard, he appeared on David Barton's show, and he was praising Ryan Walters. And he was saying Walters has done a lot, but he's limited in what he can do, because Ryan Walters can create new rules, but superintendents can just ignore them if they want. And so Bullard was saying that's why the legislature, which he's part of, has to codify laws about how we teach the Bible in school. Because Ryan Walters can say this stuff, but we can make it a law so that teachers actually have to do it. And at one point, he brought up the example of the Bibles, because Ryan Walters has put out memos saying everyone has to teach the Bible in school. And a whole bunch of superintendents across the state have said, we don't give a shit what Ryan Walters says. We have local control over our school district, and we're going to stick to, teaching kids. Thank you very much. So Bullard was saying, you have these superintendents defying what Ryan Walters says. And even worse than all that, what if they allow teachers who are not Bible-believing Christians to teach those Bibles? Let me play for you what he said about all this.
Since I have been in, I have fought to force our teachers to actually use primary sources to teach our Christian heritage and its impact on our founding documents. And he's been fighting that fight through his implementation of the Bible in schools. And I think that there's a lot of benefit to looking at that. We need to be specific there. I don't want some pink-haired person who doesn't believe in God to start trying to teach the Bible. So I want to make sure we're teaching it specifically. I've run that bill this year. That's Senate Bill 850. And that one actually gives them, I think it's 20 different quotes from the founding fathers on our Christian and constitutional heritage. And it would require that to be taught in every history class.
I'll come back to that 20 quotation thing in just a second, but what he said there is we need to be specific. I don't want some pink-haired person who doesn't believe in God to start trying to teach the Bible. And he's giving away the game right there, right? Because this whole time, Ryan Walters has said we got to get the Bible in school. From a teaching perspective, from a secular thing, it's all about teaching history. That's why we got to get the Bible in school, so kids have a primary document to learn history. And then this idiot, David Bullard, is like, well, that's not really what this is about, because what if an atheist is teaching it? Then kids won't get indoctrinated. Like, he's accidentally giving away the thing all of us have been saying all along about what Ryan Walters is trying to do. Because if they were actually teaching history using the Bible, why would it matter if an atheist is teaching the Bible? He's only upset because he's like, what if someone takes something out of context and tells kids something they're not supposed to hear? Because really, their goal is to indoctrinate children. And the other thing Bullard pointed out, I mean, he could just as easily have said he just doesn't want Muslims or Jews teaching the Bible. And of course, that would have been seen as offensive. But instead, he's like, I don't want some pink-haired atheist doing it, because he knows no one's going to stand up for atheists. He wants the Bible taught his way, in whatever manner makes the Bible look good, context be damned. He wants public schools turned into Sunday schools. He wants kids listening to sermons and not thinking critically about text that is in front of them. And more importantly, he wants certain parts of the Bible taught by Christians like him, because the possibility of kids encountering the Bible through a different lens, that would be a death sentence for his preferred form of indoctrination. So speaking of that, the bill he was talking about is Senate Bill 850. And that bill, which is now in the Education Committee, it would force social studies teachers to teach the original intent of the founding fathers while constructing the U.S. Constitution. And to that end, let me show you part of this bill here. He actually points out, like, what are we going to do? This bill shall adopt a social studies core curriculum, blah, blah, blah. The what are we talking about here? Okay, what does the social studies curriculum need to include? It shall include information about Juneteenth commemorating emancipation of enslaved African Americans. Good job, Oklahoma, site of the Tulsa Race Massacre. I'm glad you got that one in there. But look at number 2. This is the new addition that he wants to add. We have to teach kids about the original intent of the founding fathers while constructing the Constitution. Teachers shall include primary sources from the founding era and throughout U.S. history and specific quotes from the founding fathers about the U.S.'s Christian heritage, including the influence of the Ten Commandments and the Bible on the U.S.'s founding documents if presented objectively as part of a secular program of education. And then he lists a whole bunch of quotations that he says you got to teach students these quotations specifically while you are teaching them about U.S. history. And this is supposed to reflect what the founding fathers were thinking. But the thing is, if you go through these quotations and who said them, a lot of them are from people who had nothing to do with the Constitution. All right? Like, if the goal is to teach the original intent of the founding fathers when they wrote the Constitution, you would never cite any of these quotations since a bunch of them were written long after the Constitution was adopted, and none of their thoughts were incorporated into the final document. Like, there's a reason when you go through this bill, none of these quotations give you a citation, and none of them give you a year when they were said. Because I think if he gave you the place they were written, the year they were said, people would realize, wait a minute, this had nothing to do with the Constitution. So he just lied and omitted them, right? So this dude is not interested in honesty or history. His joy as a Republican comes from lying to children. And now he wants to force teachers to do that on his behalf by shoving a series of random quotations from random men into the classroom, knowing full well teachers will not be given the resources to provide proper context or won't have the background to understand why all of this is bullshit. Like, teachers do not want politicians micromanaging their classrooms, but it's so much worse when Republicans are trying to infest their classrooms with this kind of bullshit. Oklahoma, by the way, is also one of the worst states in the country when it comes to education, and this dude will not rest until it is the absolute worst. And his biggest problem is not that the Bible, like that Ryan Walters has tried to get the Bible into public schools. His concern is, oh no, what if the teacher happens to be a pink-haired atheist? Then she might not teach the Bible the way I wish the kids were taught the Bible, which obviously implies indoctrination. So this one could become a law. I don't know. We will see. It's Oklahoma. You can't expect them to do the right thing when the Bible is standing in their way. So I think I'm done for now. What questions we got here about this story? What state is this now? Oklahoma. Wall builders. Why not bridge builders? I don't know the origin of why David Barton calls his group wall builders. Like, that could easily be the name of a church-state separation group. Like, we got to build a wall between church and state. David Barton wants to tear that wall down. So I'm not sure why it's called wall builders, to be honest. I guess he's not a fan of Kat Kerr. Why are we talking about Kat Kerr? Is the self-proclaimed prophet who just makes up prophecies and says she's gone to heaven, who also, I guess, has colored hair, like dyed pink, purple hair. And honestly, I don't want her teaching kids about the Bible either. So, you know what? Point to him for that one. If you want to put your Bible in the schools, then we get to put the IRS in your churches. Haha, joke's on you. Trump has dismantled the IRS. So, no enforcement of any kind. Tax cheats can do whatever they want now. Let me guess. He got those quotes and sources from ChatGPT. I was trying to look up where he got them from, if there was like one list he was getting all that from, and I could not find like a list he was getting all that stuff from. But it looks like an amalgamation of stuff that David Barton has promoted in his lectures over the years. So I would not be surprised if David Barton just gave him that list and said, shove this in your law. Ooh, it's time for last call. This is something Den has proposed. These are things maybe I tweeted on Blue Sky, but I don't even know what this is. So I'm very curious to find out. Den, what do you have for us here? What are we going to talk about? Okay. Um, this is interesting. So this is a bill. These are like short takes on stuff. This is from Kansas. They apparently pushed a clergy mandated reporting bill. And that's great. Like if you do my thinking is if a priest finds out that a kid is getting hurt, sexually abused of some sort, if that happens in a public school, a teacher has to report that to a social worker so that that kid can be protected in some way. But priests are not mandated reporters necessarily. And what happens if a kid confesses in the act of confessional or something, in the act of confession, that he or she is the victim of abuse? What if the abuser goes to confession and says, I'm doing this? And as I've made videos about in the past, right now, confessions are exempt from mandated reporting. So I saw that bill and it said clergy mandated reporting is a bill that got introduced in Kansas. And that sounds awesome. Unfortunately, this bill says anything you learn in the act of confession would not be included in the bill. So if a priest happened to learn about it in the course of conversation with somebody, that's one thing. But if there's a loophole, what good is it if priests are mandated reporters? So good bill, doesn't go far enough. In preparation for today's Super Bowl in New Orleans, state police forced over 100 homeless men and women onto buses under threat of arrest, dumping them in an unheated warehouse. Tents destroyed, belongings lost, press are barred from the warehouse. The price tag for this cruelty, $17.5 million. Yeah, that's happy Super Bowl, everybody. This is what they did to make sure the city looked as clean and empty of unwanted people as possible. They just got the police to get rid of all the homeless people, not actually helping them, just getting them out of sight instead of doing anything to help them. And this is the sort of thing Republicans are happy to waste money on. Like what is the Trump administration doing now? They're renting out like military airplanes to take refugees and deport them to other countries for a cost that is like 8 or 9 times whatever it would normally be, but they want the optics. And so they're willing to waste money on that. While on the other side saying we got to save money. So let's get Elon Musk trying to, not waste money. They waste money all the time, but it's always to hurt people. That's their goal. That's the entire party's goal. So that one just disgusted me. Oh, yes. This is a thing, the conversation that actually happened. Let me get myself out of the way here. J.K. Rowling said, "Why do you care about a tiny fraction of the population?" She said, "This line is and always was utterly ridiculous. Gender ideology has undermined freedom of speech, scientific truth, gay rights, and women's and girls' safety, privacy, and dignity. It's also caused irreparable physical harm," or whatever the hell she said. She's doing her transphobic stuff. It's the only thing she talks about now. It's the only thing she cares about. She doesn't understand the science. She doesn't surround herself with any trans people. And what did Richard Dawkins, the famed scientist, say about all this? J.K. Rowling is such a hero. I look forward to successful lawsuits against surgeons who cut off the breasts of girls below the age of consent. What does age of consent mean if not too young to make irrevocable, life-changing decisions. First, do no harm. Like, the number of trans people who are getting gender surgeries, gender affirming surgeries before they turn 18 is so minimal. It requires so many hoops to overcome. It's just not a thing anyone needs to worry about. But interestingly enough, I've never seen the guys who say this sort of stuff ever have a word of criticism when it comes to getting boob jobs. Like, they're totally fine with 17-year-old high school students getting bigger boobs if cosmetically that's a thing they want and their parents are okay with it. They never have anything to say about that. But if it's a trans person who says, I don't want this, and they've gone through whatever hoops they have to jump through to get it, again, tiny fraction of the population, they're like, we must put those physicians in prison. And they always say it with a friggin' British accent. I don't know. I don't know why this is a thing Richard Dawkins and J.K. Rowling, for that matter, are now self-proclaimed experts in, when the people who actually study this stuff and write about this stuff are like, none of what you're saying is accurate. You have no idea how small this issue actually is, how many people are affected. We just had this whole round of anti-trans stuff from the Trump administration and barring trans people from playing sports. And I think, how many people are in the NCAA? They just said no trans women are allowed to play sports in college sports. And I think that's a new law that, or executive order, that affects like 10 people, none of whom you've heard of because they're probably not like champions of their sport. Just utterly stupid. Because again, the entire reason, the entire thing that gets these people off is, let's hurt as many people as possible, and we'll find the smallest minority group we can demonize and go after them and pretend like they're the thing that's ruining everything in our society. Completely bonkers. I write crosswords for Slate. I do it every couple of weeks. You will see one from me. If you haven't done them yet, try the Slate crossword. They are smaller crosswords. They're super fun. I enjoy doing the ones my colleagues make there, and they're great. I really enjoy doing them. I'm still submitting them to the New York Times. There should be one coming eventually. I don't know when. They decide to publish it whenever they publish it. But if anyone's interested in doing easier crosswords, I write them every couple of weeks for slate.com. And I'm telling you, their crosswords are just really fun, and they're a lot looser with cluing. So I can get away with, I can write clues that make me mad. And I can make fun of stuff I like to make fun of. They let me do that. It's great. What is this one? Oh, okay. Let's look at this. I can't believe, Den, that I wasn't going to talk about this stuff before, but I'm glad we are. Okay, just check out this tweet from Dave Silverman, the former president of American Atheists. This is in response to Tulsi Gabbard, the dictator-loving Republican who just got confirmed as like head of, national intelligence or whatever. And here's Dave Silverman talking. In 2016, Tulsi Gabbard spoke at Reason Rally 2. I chatted with her backstage and begged her to say the word atheist from the stage. She did. Today, she was confirmed as a part of the president's cabinet. This would be a great day in the atheist movement if only we had had competent leaders in the movement to maintain and build that connection. We don't. She's not woke, so she's all the namey-poos. And Trump is bad, and anyone in his team is bad, so they dropped contact. They put Tulsi down as a movement. So here we sit, facing an onslaught from the religious right, and sitting on that cabinet is a former friend who really could have helped us, but we pushed away because purity. Great job, guys. Unbelievably stupid thing to say. Where do we start here? Reason Rally 2, which was, I think, when? In like 2012? Maybe 2016. I can't remember anymore. It had a bunch of right-wing people, or like conservatives who pretended they were liberal. Tulsi Gabbard was one of them. Dave Rubin was speaking there at that event. And there's a reason that event didn't get much enthusiasm, for good reason. Anyway, if his whole thing of Tulsi Gabbard could have been our friend, why? Because she once said the word atheist on stage. Who cares? That doesn't make her our friend. Barack Obama said the word atheist in his speeches. Do you think he's like an atheist ally? Not really. But this idea that Tulsi Gabbard, who has lied about everything, who like is a right-wing troll, who hangs out with like Bashar al-Assad of Syria and like works with those people and talks to them, why on earth would we be happy to have someone like her in the cabinet? She's not good for the country. That's like saying Robert F. Kennedy is a great health and human services director because he questions science. And aren't we questioners and contrarians? Like, no, he's just a conspiracy theorist. There's nothing good about him in the cabinet. It's bad for experts and scientists. And you would think someone who cares about critical thinking and expertise and all that would listen to what the experts are saying and not some right-wing troll who once said atheist on stage. By the way, I love that part at the end too. We're facing an onslaught from the religious right, and we could have used a friend in the cabinet. Dave Silverman is like the chair of the board of directors for an atheist group that panders to the right. They go to CPAC because they want to recruit members. They want right-wing Republicans to get elected. So what the hell is he talking about now, complaining about the onslaught from the religious right? His group voted for those idiots. I don't know what he's doing. And again, also the whole namey poos thing is just stupid. We're not calling her names because like we don't like her. We criticize her because she's just a horrible person to run national intelligence. Because for all we know, she's going to give away secrets to her dictator friends. Ugh. What else we got here? The headline from the newspaper: Louisiana Department of Health ends mass vaccinations, bans seasonal vaccine promotion. It is crazy. Republicans do love killing kids. This is happening right now as in Texas, there is a measles outbreak that has hit like dozens and dozens of unvaccinated children. And at a time when bird flu could become a thing, if it ever morphs into something that could hit humans, and measles are coming back, here's a state saying, let's not talk about vaccinations. And the Republican Party confirms RFK, who is anti-vaccination. So we're just walking into a very, very bad situation. And if something like COVID happens again, and for all we know, it is happening right now, we are running against a country where a whole bunch of very dumb people are not going to do the one thing that protects their lives. And because we're talking about vaccines, their ignorance is going to affect all of us. So, yeah, this is absolute madness. It's very scary stuff. This is interesting. This is from Nick Fish, who's the president of American Atheists Now. He's not Dave Silverman and doesn't agree with Dave Silverman. But I just saw this from Nick Fish and I liked it. Gonna suggest you listen to Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me this weekend. The opening game in particular might hear a familiar voice and some cheers for and jokes about church-state separation. If you haven't heard that show, there is a podcast, Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. It also airs on NPR, but it's basically a trivia game where they have callers call in and play games with their panel of experts and comedians. And I guess Nick is going to be on it this weekend. And usually they don't reveal too much about the contestants who play the games. They just kind of say the first name, but they do ask, what do you do for a living? And I'm very curious what happens. Nick is super smart. I'm sure he wins whatever game they're playing. But that just seemed interesting. I can't wait to hear that one. All right. That was fun, Dan. We should do more of that. All right. Thank you all for watching. Happy Valentine's Day to all of you. My schedule is a little crazy for the next couple of weeks, so I may end up doing this live stream on Wednesdays for the next couple of weeks because I'm out of town after that. And then I'll resume Fridays as soon as I can. But I'll post whatever links on YouTube so you know when the next show is going to be. Thank you to Den for helping out, and have a good weekend, everybody.